Hello, everyone, and welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and this is the review of the live action remake to an animated classic, I guess you could say, from 15 years ago, How to Train Your Dragon. This is brought to us from Universal Pictures and DreamWorks Pictures. This film is directed by Dean Du Bois, who helped create How to Train Your Dragon, the animated film, and it stars Mason Times, Nico Parker, Nick Frost, and Gerard Butler, who is reprising his role from the animated feature. And a synopsis of this film: as an ancient threat endangers both Vikings and dragons alike, the friendship between Hiccup, an inventive Viking, and Toothless, a night fairy dragon, become the key to both species forging a new future together. As I said, this is a remake, a live action remake of the animated films, and I was never a Train Your Dragon guy. I never got into those animated films. I think there's three of them. And it's not because I didn't like them. I just never got around to watching them. This was around the time, at least when the original came out, when my kids were kids and they were into animated films, but they never latched on to the Dragon films. So I never watched them. You know, they were in the other animated features. But I've heard so many good things about the animated film. I don't know why I never watched it, but my intentions were to watch it before I watched the live action film. And to be honest with you, the live action film snuck up on me. I thought in my mind, I thought it was coming out around Thanksgiving. I don't know why, but it is what it is. Here it is. So I'm glad though. I'm glad that I didn't watch the original, because normally when that happens, human nature, you're going to compare it to the animated film. So I went into this with fresh eyes as a newbie, and I quite enjoyed the film. It was very fun. I can see why the animated features are so popular, and I know that there are probably differences. Of course, you can't translate one to the other unless you're the Lion King. But as long as it wasn't the Lion King, um, I think it did a good job. This film manages to tell a very interesting story, to the point where normally, when a film loses my interest, I would, you know, start thinking about other things or looking at my watch or whatever the case may be. At no point in this film did I feel bored or feel uninterested in the characters or anything like that. It was very, very intriguing and very exciting and funny and heartfelt. And I, I think it checked every box you need for a family film, for a fantasy adventure type film. And I may not be the right person to make this statement, being as though I haven't watched the animated film. I think it did justice to that animated film, because I can feel the love that went into this. Now, it helps that the co-creator of the animated film wrote and directed this film, so that helps. It also helps that the CG animation for Toothless is a carbon copy of the animated film. That also helps. So keeping the vibe is important. There are a few standouts, and it's some, maybe not some, a couple of things that I didn't too much care for about the film. But starting with the standouts, the good parts, I love the story. I love the friendship that developed between Hiccup and Toothless. It felt genuine. It felt real. It wasn't just a flash in the pan type thing, like, oh, we're friends. It's not Batman v Superman just because their mom had the same first name. No, this they actually had to develop it. And this film took the time to develop it, and I appreciated it for that. Mason Times, who plays Hiccup, I think he did an excellent job as that character. I believe Jay Bernthal played him in the animated film. Voiced did the voice acting for that character, and I've seen snippets of it, even though I didn't see the full film, so I have familiarity with it. But I think Mason did a pretty decent job taking over as Hiccup in this film. Nico Parker was a good addition to this film, but the standout performance is Gerard Butler. Gerard Butler, man, was born for this role. He was perfect for this role. You can throw away 300 and Olympus Has Fallen and all those action films that he put out. That's all fine and good, but this role, this is his defining role to me. This is the best Gerard Butler I have seen. He was so entertaining. He was funny. He was intense. Everything that you know about Gerard Butler was all melded together in this one performance here as the father of Hiccup. And I was so impressed by that. I know he did the voice of this character in the animated film, and that's great. That's all good. But to do it in live action and really put his physical attributes into the role along with his voice was just top notch to me. I mean, I was super impressed with his performance here. Stole the movie. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but he is the star to me in this film. The cinematography was gorgeous. I love the look of the film. It was shot really well, and the pacing was done really well. This was a well directed film. I think Dean DeBose did an excellent job directing this film. This movie is a tad bit over 2 hours, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels like a 90-minute movie, but when you leave the theater, you realize, like, man, this movie was over 2 hours. It was a little long, but it didn't feel it, and that's rare. These days, normally you feel every minute of a movie, but this 2 hours flew by, and that's great. When you can sit down for 2 hours and actually enjoy it. As far as my nitpicks or my gripes about the film, my biggest gripe is the CG of the dragons. And the good gotta suffer for the bad here. I did not like how the dragons looked in this film. And the reason being, some looked real. Some of the dragons were just well done CG wise. But the other ones look like cartoons. It looked like it was snatched from the animated film. And I'm sitting there like, okay, we're supposed to take XYZ dragon serious, but these over here, they're kitty looking. And don't get me wrong, I understand that this is a kid's movie at its core. I get all that, but they just look really, really goofy. Some of the dragons here, you can get away with that with the animated film, but not in the live action. Especially when you have dragons in here that looks terrifying, and terrifyingly real. But you mix the two together, and it doesn't come off well, But my other gripe is some of the supporting characters, and particularly the friends of Hiccup. Even though they didn't start off as friends, but they ended up being friends. I didn't too much care for those characters. Honestly, they could have did without them. I'm pretty sure they're in the animated film, so maybe I didn't see it in context of how they interact in that film, and I probably would have appreciated them more in this one. But I couldn't get into them. I really did not enjoy them. Those characters in this film, they weren't funny. They were meant to be comic reliefs, but I didn't find the humor in in their characters. And that's no disrespect to the actors who's playing these roles. It was just they were kind of underwritten, underdeveloped in some instances, and just there to be there. And I don't know. It just felt like a waste to me. I think you could have did a little more with those characters, but it you know it is what it is. That's not what this movie is about. It's about the relationship between Toothless and Hiccup, and Hiccup and his father, for the most part. So that's the story. Those are the stories you're following in this film, and if that's the core of this film, the film is successful. I think it did a good job with those two elements of this film, and the relationship between Hiccup and Nico Parker's character as well. I think that was a good relationship that they had, building that love interest, and honestly building that up. It wasn't just, oh, I love you. No, it actually built up to something there, and I once again appreciated the film for taking its time with that. Overall, How to Train Your Dragon was a fun time. It was a true family film. This checks all the boxes. If in case you want to bring the whole family, it checks the boxes for adults and children alike. How to Train Your Dragon, the live action remake, gets a letter grade of a B minus. Yeah, it was a surprisingly good film. At least surprising for me. If you're a fan of the franchise of the animated films, it probably isn't a big shock for you, but for me, it was a shock. It was a surprise, and it was a good surprise. I would like to know, what did you think of How to Train Your Dragon? I keep wanting to say drain. How you gonna drain a dragon? How to Train Your Dragon. You can email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Also, don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel on YouTube, and like this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of How to Train Your Dragon. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.